For more on the president's eroding support among women, I'm joined by NARAL Pro-Choice America President Nancy Keenan. Thanks for joining us tonight. So Nancy, I've just got to ask you, everybody knows the first stage of grief is denial, and I don't want to suggest it, but do you accept the fact that, in fact, the gender gap has disappeared and that somehow we're in a new world in terms of how women are voting in this campaign?
Eliot, I don't, and I think that the Gallup poll is an outlier here, and I think that, quite honestly, this entire campaign has been about drawing the contrast between President Obama, who has stood with women, the Affordable Care Act, whether it was Lilly Ledbetter, and a guy in Mitt Romney who believes women should be in binders, and as though he doesn't even know some of the women that he could bring to his cabinet. So I don't believe, at the end of the day, that gender gap that you're seeing a little bit of now is going to present itself in the voting booth. I believe that women are going to vote for Barack Obama because they understand what's at stake, and they understand that their reproductive rights and the right to an abortion in this country is at stake if Mitt Romney is elected. He's not telling the truth, and he can't be trusted.
Okay. Nancy, you made a very persuasive argument, every piece of which I wholeheartedly agree with, but you didn't really confront the problem, which I'm trying to get my arms around, which is, has at this moment, you said at the end of the day the gender gap will reemerge. I hope that's right. I think it's right. But I'm loath simply to disregard what seem to be a series of polls that do show some substantial swing. The 18-point margin that the president had a couple weeks ago, a month or 2 months ago, seems to have been diminished dramatically. Give me your theory about why that could be happening, because the case that you just made has been made persuasively by the president, by Bill Clinton, by every surrogate for the president. What is happening out there?
You know, Eliot, I think that polls are going to swing a lot either way here in these last 19 days. And so, again, I think there's outliers, like the Gallup poll is an outlier. I don't actually agree that that it has swung that dramatically. I do believe that there are other issues that people are looking at this time, and women around jobs and the economy, you bet. But when you finally get into that polling booth and women have to sort through who has the best economic plan, who has the best foreign policy plan, and who is going to protect my freedom and my privacy, I think that ultimately the vote is going to be for Barack Obama, and they're going to see through all of this bogus rhetoric of Mitt Romney trying to be everything to everybody.
Look, I agree with you. We have been merciless in describing Governor Mitt Romney, former Governor Romney, as an etch-a-sketch candidate without a core, without a soul, willing to take any position at any moment, any time, for any audience. Having said that, has the president and have the surrogates for the president been doing enough to mention the two words that resonate with me perhaps more than others, the Supreme Court? Has the issue of Roe's potential reversal been part of the talking points enough since the convention? Has it somehow been permitted to fall off the map because there was a self-confidence that the gender gap would survive?
No, Eliot, I don't know if you remember, but I sure don't remember ever when a presidential campaign was running ads in a battleground state on the issue of abortion. And we are seeing this president run those ads as a positive. It's the first time that, quite honestly, the Democrats have been on the offense on the issue of reproductive choice and not on the defense. And in fact, so much on the offense that the Republicans are trying to get into the game. And I think that's why you are not seeing the kind of attacks and the raising up by the Republicans about this issue, because they know it's a winning issue with women in this country. They know it's a winning issue for families, and it's a winning issue for candidates that stand for reproductive rights and reproductive choice.
Look, again, I agree with you, and Mitt Romney has been as evasive and as weak-kneed and lacking in spine on the issue of choice as has been on virtually every other issue, moving across the spectrum faster than the speed of sound, apparently. But then you look at the Missouri Senate race, where Todd Akin's comments, most of us thought, would have almost rendered him impossible as a candidate. How could he stand up in public having said what he... And that race is uncomfortably close, even though we were hopeful Claire McCaskill will win. It's uncomfortably close. What does that say about our ability to communicate on this issue and bring voters together around it?
You know, look, I think that the country is divided on this issue, and I think that's what you're seeing, but you're also seeing the other side in the Republican Party having overstepped, seriously overstepped. And whether it was the issue around Sandra Fluke and her being called names, whether it was the issue of coverage of birth control, and that's where the American public says enough, and they want it stopped. And so fundamentally here, elections do matter. I think that you will see these candidates that are pro-choice win across this country. And again, it just reaffirms that the American public is pro-choice and they don't want politicians involved in this decision. So yes, they're close. We knew those were going to be close races, but at the end of the day, I think the people will vote for their privacy and their freedom and reject these all-out attacks on women's reproductive rights.
Look, I certainly hope you're right. Only 19 days, I guess, till we find out whether your thesis is correct. And let's hope there is a loud, vocal, and strong argument made precisely as you made it just a few moments ago. It was perfect. Nancy Keenan, president of NARAL Pro-Choice America, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Eliot.